members, to the entire parliamentary community. And so we have a number of services. We have devotions every morning, 7:30 to 8.
Okay.
And we have lunch hour programs as well, among others.
I mean, it's good to have, someone who can pray for us, pray for the country, pray for our leaders.
Amen.
So I think that is really, really nice.
Yes, we thank God for the opportunity.
Yes. And of course, to begin with, our topic today is we are talking about sustainable procurement reforms in the country. And just to start off, just for our dear viewer out there who might not fully understand what procurement means, what is public sector procurement?
Thank you very much. Public sector procurement is really the method, the way through which government ministries, departments, agencies, local governments acquire goods, supplies, services to meet needs. And in this acquisition process, they're using public funds. And the number of activities that are involved in the procurement process, there's a whole cycle. And it starts from identifying what is needed, planning, and identifying what is needed to the very end, to ensuring that, making sure that whatever is planned for, whatever is procured is actually delivered and as expected and paid for. And of course, you may know that public procurement accounts for about 60% of Uganda's national expenditure. And that is quite significant and substantial. And so because of that, the procurement function holds substantial power to influence market trends, to promote fair competition, influence, shape business practices. And so it's a key tool. It's a key tool that can be used to propel or catapult socioeconomic development, to drive socioeconomic development in Uganda.
Okay, now you mentioned something to do with the public funds. What are those public funds? Because we do understand that the government works using these public funds. So if you can just expound more on that.
The public, tomorrow we have the reading of the budget for the next financial year. And so in the reading of the budget, there are proposals of how the government plans to have its expenditure and the inflows, where the revenues are coming from. And so for every entity, every government ministry, department, agency, local government is part of this process. And so the public funds are the resources that government generates from the different activities. And so these resources, these funds are used to to provide service delivery at different levels to the public, to the common man, to the peasant, down to the peasant. Yes.
Okay. Then we talk about sustainability, of course. We need sustainability even when it comes to procurement. We need to make sure that even as a country, everything is accounted for and everything is sustainable. So
That's right.
If you can just get into the details of sustainability when it comes to procurement.
Now, sustainability, that like the name goes, sustainability is really about, I talked about acquiring goods, services, and works for government to meet, for service delivery. And now in the process of the acquisition, we ensure sustainability takes care to ensure that the current needs are met. Our current needs are met without affecting and met to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And with sustainability, we have 4 key pillars. We have the environment pillar, the social pillar, the economic pillar, and the governance pillar.
Yes.
We'll eventually get into them. And so when we talk sustainable procurement, we are talking about a process that integrates the environmental, the economic, and social factors into the procurement process and decision making, while ensuring that the needs of the key stakeholders are met. Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned some pillars there. If we could just dive into them briefly.
In the economic pillar, we have the economic pillar, we have the social pillar, and then we have the environment pillar. Now, the environment pillar looks at ensuring that we acquire goods, services, or works in a way that minimizes damage to the environment, We are looking at getting eco-friendly products, for example, in the procurement process. With the environmental pillar, for example, if you're constructing a road, then ensuring that where trees are felled down, then they are replanted. A certain number is replanted. That's the environmental. Those are some of the components of the environmental pillar. It has many aspects, but also ensuring that generally the environment is conserved and we mitigate the use or consumption of or procurement of products that can adversely affect the environment. And then we have the social pillar. In the social pillar, we're looking at human rights issues. For example, in a construction site, what are the labor issues there? Is there, are there any health and safety concerns? Is there personal protective equipment? What are the working conditions for the people down to the ground, in the ground? Are miners being employed, for example? You know, issues of the professionalism of the workers. Some workers go and by the time they leave, they have terrorized the entire community. They have impregnated people's wives. They've infected many with HIV. So that's what the social pillar looks at. Now, the economic pillar looks at promoting, promoting the local industry through using interventions like preference schemes. We have reservation schemes and we have preference schemes. And so in this, through this, we are looking at ways we can support the local industry, grow the local industry, buying local, more of buying local. And so with this pillar, we find that there's some items that we reserve for the local market. For example, textiles. If Uganda Prison Service, Uganda Police Force, they will buy their textiles, they'll buy their uniforms internally from NITIL in order to boost our internal system, our internal industry internally. And so those are some, and then governance looks at ethical issues, you know, generally governance issues. It's really not a standalone pillar, but it supports, it's more supportive and core to the efficient functioning of the other three core pillars. Yes.
Now that you've looked at governance, you've also mentioned Uganda Police, prisons. What role does an ordinary person have in sustainable procurement?
Now, an ordinary person has a lot of ways that they can participate in sustainable procurement. For example, you can choose to buy, making the right buying decisions. You can choose to buy environmentally friendly goods, those that are eco-friendly. You may choose to buy, a local person may choose to buy, for example, products that that have eco-labels, because eco-labels mean that they are certified and they meet certain certain standards. But an ordinary person can also decide to postpone consumption. Buy only what you need when you need it. Buy only what you need when you need it. As much as possible, you can recycle, you can reuse. For instance, you may not buy cartons of bottled water in plastic boxes, but you may decide that you are going to get to buy a dispenser and use a glass, so that you reduce on the use of the single-use plastics. That will go a long way and endanger the environment in the long run, because you know that their disposal is usually not the best. So a local person, an ordinary person can do that. An ordinary person can choose to also make personal decisions that promote, that are sustainable. You may decide to choose to eat healthy. For example, rather than eating the chips and chicken, you know, and you know, we know that most of that chips and chicken is prepared using transformer oil, which is dangerous, really. Yes, indeed it is. You may decide to go and eat your kalo, eat your kalo and your greens. Yes, you can have a backyard garden and you plant your greens, other than buying tomatoes, which are sprayed with pesticides and are dangerous. You have read, you have seen in the media, in the papers, most of these agricultural products are actually, they have chemicals.
They have a lot of chemicals.
And they are poisonous. An ordinary person can make such decisions. An ordinary person can also join NGOs, activists to champion and lobby for sustainability. Recently, the Church of Uganda is in the process, the province is in the process of coming up with its strategic framework for 2026 to 2030. And and of course, one of the key objectives in the province is also ensuring that the environment is preserved and this responsible agriculture, the climate change issues are mitigated.
Yes.
And so as a Christian, one of the things that you can do is that you can actually decide to plant trees. How about every time we're baptizing children, you can plant 3 trees.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 3
That's
trees.
a good way.
Every time you're baptizing a child, for God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Indeed.
As the child grows, the trees are growing,
Yeah,
and we are. So those are some of a few of the ways that an ordinary person, a person that is not involved in public buying, who is not in a government ministry, department, agency, or local government can do. There is something that each of us can do to contribute to this sustainability agenda. Yes.
Okay. And when was this concept started? How did it come about?
Now, the adoption and endorsement of the 2030 agenda and the UN SG Sustainable Development Goals in 2015 by the 191 UN nations. And of course, Uganda is a member country of the UN.
Yes.
This is what marked the beginning of the sustainable procurement concept in public sector. And sustainable public procurement is specifically provided for under target 12.7. 12.7 sustainable practices and consumption. And so as a member of the UN, Uganda is committed to the implementation of all the 17 SDGs and ensuring that all the 169 targets are met by 2030. And we do this, government is doing this through introducing sustainable public procurement reform. And there is a lot of opportunity, a lot of potential, because we note that sustainable public procurement influences all the 17 sustainable development goals, and at least about 80% of the 169 targets that were set in 2015. And so this reform that government has started is very pertinent, and it will go away, government will go away in leveraging its purchasing power to influence markets, drive innovation, shape market practices, and promote sustainable practices generally amongst all the stakeholders that are involved in public procurement. Yes.
Okay, and why do we deem it? Why should it be important to us? Why should we have sustainable procurement, something that can be acted out in the country?
You know, the climate change issues are real, and it's getting worse every day. Uganda is facing a number of environmental challenges. We have a number of them. We have deforestation, we have pollution, we have the floods, and other climate change impacts generally. And these diverse impacts, and so you find that the air, there was a time one of the newspaper dailies ran a headline of the rate of pollution of the air, for example, in the city. And so you find that our air is increasingly getting polluted, and there is need to take deliberate effort to ensure that we address the factors that are causing pollution. Because pollution affects the environment, but it also affects the well-being and the health of the citizens and the animals. And you never know, maybe you could find that probably the cancer cases are going up because of some of this, because those are toxins, those emissions, those externalities are toxins that we ingest as human beings, not the way God intended for it to be. And so this affects the quality of life, this affects our well-being, and there is therefore need for us to put into place ways and remedies to curb emissions, but also mitigate environmental degradation. And so by adopting sustainable procurement practices, government can choose products and services that are environmentally friendly, that and help to reduce these negative effects. That's one of the reasons, key reasons why we need sustainable public procurement, but also to support social development, you know. In this part of what is involved in public procurement is that we have suppliers as key stakeholders. And so now we are saying that as we are acquiring suppliers to deliver products, services, we are looking at priorities to look for suppliers who uphold fair labor practices, for example, and contribute to social equity. And so this goes a long way to improve working conditions, but also to support the marginalized communities like and persons like women, youth, persons with disability. This is another way, and but also there is need to enhance economic growth.
Yes.
There's need to enhance economic growth to stimulate Uganda's economy. And so sustainable public procurement encourages innovation and development of green technologies, leading to job creation, but also economic diversification. And so we can adopt energy efficient technologies, for example. And this will go a long way in saving costs, but also conserving the environment, remembering that sustainable public procurement we are looking at meeting our needs without compromising the needs of the future. So my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren should be able to meet their needs. So as we make decisions in public procurement, we should have that at the back of our minds. The other reason, of course, is that it's important that we align with national and global goals. I have talked about the Sustainable Development Goals. And therefore, it is important, Uganda being a member country of the UN, it is important that we implement the SDG goals. We help the country to meet its international obligations, and we contribute to the global efforts in combating climate change generally, but also to build institutional capacity. I talked about governance as one of the pillars. Sustainable public procurement fosters transparency and accountability within public institutions, because it's all hinged in there. You can have good policies, but if you do not have institutions that practice transparency and accountable within their framework, then this will all be a wasted effort. Those are some of the ways.
Okay, then just to get into the sustainable procurement reform, a bit more of that, if you can give us a bit more detail, then also how can the taxpayer contribute to that?
How can the taxpayer contribute to sustainable public procurement? One, the one most important is that taxpayer should stay informed and be aware. Understand what sustainable public procurement is. But the sustainability begins with you, with me, before I can go and champion it in the public space. Understand what it is about. Understand that it's about using public funds to acquire goods, services, and works that are environmentally friendly, socially responsive, and economically viable. That is very important. So a taxpayer should understand that, but on top of understanding that, educate others, spread the word, spread the message, let others get to know about sustainability, but also can also lead. I talked about leading by example. Again, I'll talk about leading by example. Sustainability begins with you. It begins with me as an individual. And so we can lead by example in personal purchases. You know, in personal purchases by using, for example, for us, the mothers and the wives, we can decide to use energy efficient stoves for cooking, so that we reduce on the number of trees that are being felled. You know, you can decide to use a chikapu for shopping. You know those chikapus?
Oh, yes.
Those ones that we think are local, yeah, they're more environmentally friendly than the kavera, because at the end of the day, the kavera, the dispose of the kavera is so terrible, and it ends up going to the lakes, and it affects drainage and causes a real nightmare. Those are some of the personal decisions. You can choose to buy eco-friendly products, really, and the more each of us makes a decision that is sustainable, makes a purchasing decision, a buying decision that promotes that's environmentally friendly, socially responsive, and economically viable, the more that we go a long way to conserve the environment and drive this agenda together. But also the taxpayer, we can buy local as much as possible, buy local. Buy bed sheets from Nightingale, for example.
Yes, which actually also brings me to my next question. Does the government entirely procure from the country within its, within Uganda, or does it also go ahead, take an extra mile to, procure stuff from abroad, from different countries? And how can we see best that we actually, promote our own country in certain things?
Okay, we have the reservation schemes that I talked about and the preference schemes. Now, under the reservation, we have reservations, we have goods, we have services that are reserved for the local market.
Okay.
I talked about, for example, the textiles. We also have printing services, for example. So those are reserved for the local market. But also we have reservations according to value thresholds, whereby a procurement beyond a certain value, if it is a supply, service, or works, shall not be advertised internationally. It shall be reserved for the local market in order to promote the local industry, the small, medium enterprises within the country. So we have that. But also we have mechanisms whereby in the event, because some sectors, some entities are specialized, and they deal in specialized things. So in the event that, for example, we have construction of a large road, a big road, and it's a large works, and we have ended up by getting, for example, a Chinese firm, then there's also provision for subcontracting. That there's a component of those works that is reserved for the local industry. In the past, you'd find that you get the foreign firm doing everything, including supplying aggregate. But now we have reservation. We have that kind of reservation, which caters for the local components, such that even when the foreign firm has the contract, the local community, the local associations of women, persons with disabilities, of small and medium enterprises can benefit to an extent from public procurement. And so we have a number of mechanisms. Now with the preference schemes, if we have a foreign bidder and at evaluation, what happens is that there is a markup that is given to the local firms.
Yes.
And that markup improves their competitive position, such that they're able to compete better, more favorably than the foreign firms. And so there are a lot of mechanisms. These are some of the mechanisms that we have in place to ensure that we promote the local industries, the local sector, the local companies and businesses within the country. But there also, perhaps also to note that one of the key components is that now government, we have guidelines that are in place to ensure that there's a certain portion of procurements, of government spend that every entity is supposed to reserve for the marginalized groups, the women, the youth, the persons with disability. And how this works is that every entity, every ministry, department or local government, for example, is supposed to, during that period of procurement planning and budgeting, they are supposed to identify components that can be done by these segments, by women, by persons with disability, by youth. So for example, if you have a Juakali group and they are youth, then an entity wants to buy some art products within a financial year, that is reserved for
them.
That is reserved for them. And so they get to benefit. They get to benefit from public procurement, and as they are benefiting, we're catapulting, we're creating employment, there's value addition, but also we're developing the local industry internally, domestically. Yes.
Okay, that's quite nice. Well, we are going for a short commercial break, but please do stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are discussing sustainable procurement reforms in the country, and of course, we have more coming right up. So please do stay tuned.
Issues at hand. This is Church of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission. This is Charge of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission. Issues at hand.
Yes, welcome back. And of course, we are discussing sustainable procurement reforms in Uganda with Reverend Gillian Amongin, the Principal Procurement Officer from the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. And of course, we have quite a very interesting discussion right here to do with procurement and all things sustainability. So just to move forward, how do public sector organizations plan to promote sustainable procurement practices?
One of the ways, thank you so much, one of the ways that public organizations can choose to, are planning to promote sustainable public procurement practices is by choosing eco-friendly products. And environmentally friendly products. For example, choosing to buy recycled paper. Choosing to buy recycled paper, choosing to buy energy efficient lights, for example, electric vehicles and cleaning products, among others, that are environmentally friendly. And this can make a very big difference, especially if the quantities are substantial. Remember, we said government is the biggest buyer. So imagine that all government agencies are buying, because all government agencies use lights. All of them use paper. Actually, paper is used. It's a cross-cutting item. So if we choose to, public entities decide to buy recycled paper, that will go a long way, in conserving the environment, but also setting rules in contracts. In the procurement process, like I said, starts at planning and budgeting. Now, at planning and budgeting, we identification. When we're identifying the need, identifying needs that environmentally supplies, coming up with specifications of goods and services that are environmentally friendly at that level, and ensuring that we plan for them right up to their point of disposal. And we don't just, so we include this in the bidding documents, the details in the bidding documents. So the bidding document will have specifications, terms of reference of products that are environmentally friendly, that must be conserved. And then that will also reduce further to the contracts, because a bidding document fits into a contract. Now, in the contract, setting rules that include green and ethical rules or standards, for example, and ensuring, because now the contract is the standard upon which the performance by the supplier or provider is measured. And ensuring that that is adhered to. That is one of the ways, but also through capacity building, awareness raising, training, by teaching their employers to think sustainably while buying purchases, because this helps a lot, helps people not to just to consider the shelf price, but the long-term impacts of their buying decisions. So capacity building, the training, awareness raising, should be continuous, and the Ministry of Finance is championing that. And thank you for giving us this space to do this as well. And so those are some of the interventions, but also engaging suppliers, collaborating with suppliers and other stakeholders. Because the procurement process has a number of stakeholders. And suppliers and providers are key stakeholders, amongst others. But we also have civil society organizations. We have the public. We have the media. Those are key stakeholders, and others. And so ensuring that we involve them in sustainability, we engage with them to share ideas and goals. The view is that we should have a harmonized view, we should have harmonized goals, we should be thinking and going the same direction. For example, maybe through holding meetings or through holding workshops or forums like this to help stakeholders understand what sustainable public procurement is about and how we can work together, how each stakeholder can contribute to the sustainability agenda. But the other way that public entities can do it is to recognize exemplary initiatives.
Okay.
Yeah, exemplary initiatives, more of the stick and carrot thing. Yeah, somebody has done well, reward. If an entity, if a procurement department has, for example, championed a waste-free program, or they have contributed to cutting down of greenhouse carbon emissions,
yes,
they can be recognized.
Yeah.
They can be celebrated to inspire others, to move in the same direction. And so this can help to bring meaningful change within the procurement operations and generally the supply chain. Yes.
Okay, we have looked at the organizations and how they've implemented sustainable procurement. How has the government implemented this?
Sustainability, by the sustainable public procurement, is something that government started championing quite some time back. For example, in 2019, PPDA came up with a revised standard bidding endorsement for works. And that revised standard bidding endorsement for works was taking care of the environmental, social, and health considerations.
Yes.
And so that was introduced then, and it has been in use up to now. But also government has revised its legal framework. It has revised its legal framework to provide for reservation schemes, preference schemes, for example, but also to provide for sustainable procurement. The schemes fall under sustainable public procurement reform under Section 66 of the amended Act. You will find this provision for sustainable public procurement. That is another way. But also government, in the next financial year, we plan to roll out sustainable. We are finalizing the identification of priority products that we shall pilot in government entities. We're looking at low-hanging fruits, like paper, photocopying paper, like printers, like the timber, and we plan to roll them out to different entities such that we can start. We can and we continue monitoring and measuring and seeing the performance. But also we plan to continue the continuous engagements, capacity building, awareness raising, and also engaging the market.
Yes.
Because, like I said, the market is very key. You may want a product that is sustainable or eco-friendly, but is the market? Is it there in the market? Is it available?
Exactly.
Do they have the capacity to supply in sufficient quantity? And timelines. And so those are some of the dynamics that government has put into consideration to implement this reform.
Okay.
Yes.
So we looked at the importance of sustainable public procurement, and now we want to know the benefits. Why should we embrace this?
There are a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
There are a lot of benefits of sustainable public procurement. For example, the wastages are cut. We reduce on wastage. And when we talk about waste, this is immense.
Yeah.
It goes from funds to, the consumables that we use on a daily.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine if you cut down on waste, even God is pleased.
Yeah.
Because we are stewards. God has placed us here to steward over His creation. So when we cut waste, then we are being responsible stewards.
Yes.
The things like driving efficiency. Yeah, we will drive efficiency levels up because we have also dealt away with, we have decluttered and cut down on the waste, but also will reduce on the emissions, the pollution, and the externalities that that affect the environment, will improve on the quality of life, improve on the quality of life. By the way, you notice that these days the viral infections are
There are very many.
There are very many.
Yeah.
And now there's rumor that COVID-19 is back.
Oh, it's back.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's back. And some of the triggers are this. It's the enablers, an environment that is polluted, the emissions.
Yeah.
So we'll have a healthier population. We'll have a lot of savings that are realized, and we'll have better technologies, because sustainable public procurement promotes innovation.
Yeah.
So you will have better technologies.
That's true.
That are eco-friendly, that are environmentally friendly, and this the benefits are immense. But also, if you look at for example, when we're using e-procurement, because that is one of the reforms within the sustainable public procurement framework.
Yes.
E-procurement, and so we are saying we are no longer using paper. Yeah, we are cutting out on the use of paper. We're automating the procurement processes, right from planning to the end stage.
Yeah.
And so when we automate the procurement processes, just imagine how much paper we get rid of.
That's true.
Just imagine the transparency that will be enhanced. Yeah, the transparency, the openness. Just imagine the reduction of the transaction costs. Yeah, because now a supplier does no longer have to travel from Moroto to come and deliver a bid to Ministry of Finance. They can just send it online. And then traceability. And so so when you look at e-procurement, just employing e-procurement will translate to a lot of savings to the environment.
That's true.
To the business sector, and to the health and well-being of Ugandans. And not just Ugandans. And then, because you see, again, having our children, the future generations at the back of our mind. I'm interested in ensuring that, I'm interested in being a grandmother one day.
Yeah.
And a great-grandmother. And it's good to ensure that we plan for them. We live responsible lives by making wise buying decisions right now that will ensure that when their time comes, they're also able.
Yeah.
They're able to meet their own needs.
That's true.
Yes.
Now, well, of course, you have mentioned some of the benefits. What have we achieved so far as a country?
There are a lot of achievements as a country. Government has achieved a lot. I have talked about
technological advancement.
Yes, but we have also the National Public Sector Procurement Policy. The National Public Sector Procurement Policy. Now, this sets the strategic direction of public procurement in Uganda. And in this document, under Section 5 of this document, you'll find provision for sustainable public procurement.
Okay.
And so, this document, this policy document that you can even get on the Ministry of Finance website, by the way, it's available there, and that I would interest every viewer to reading and getting to understand the contents therein. This document sets the strategic direction of public procurement in Uganda, and it is upon this document that the legal reforms were done. We've had I've talked about how we've amended the Act. The Act has been amended to provide for sustainable public procurement.
Yes.
And further down, we have regulations in place, because the regulations operationalize the Act. And now even the bidding documents for supplies, for services, for works, all of them have been revised to be able to implement and operationalize the sustainable public procurement reform. So that is one of the key achievements so far. But the other one is also that we also have a national sustainable public procurement national action plan. It's a 5-year action plan, and there are in a lot of activities that are meant to drive this agenda, and we are implementing them already. And we look to reviewing them midway, reviewing them and accordingly. But also we have a sustainable public procurement, relatedly, we have a sustainable public procurement secretariat. Now this secretariat was being put in place, this came in place around August 2023. It's in place to help us to coordinate, monitor, and galvanize the activities of sustainable public procurement, because it's a huge reform that is covering the entire country. And so we have that. We have that in place, and they're doing well. They are picked up. They're doing very well so far. We have a lot of virtual engagements and trainings. Virtual, because again, we're talking sustainable public procurement. Yeah, but also because of the resource envelope. So we are maximizing and utilizing the resources available. Rather than waiting or looking for money for workshops, which is not there, we are saying, no, we can have the virtual workshops. And so the virtual trainings and a number of stakeholders get trained on a weekly basis. There's that, but also we have trained a number of trainers, about over 100. Wow. From different entities. So we have a pool of trainers, training of trainers, and these are key resource that is the ambassadors that go to their different entities to train others. And of course, I talked about the reservation schemes and the preference schemes that are in place, that are in place and are being implemented. That is a key achievement as well. And so we keep monitoring PPDA. Together with PPDA, we keep monitoring these reforms to see whether they're delivering the intended benefits. But there's also the ongoing automation of the public procurement processes through e-procurement. I've mentioned e-procurement. Yes. And so far we have some entities that are rolled on to e-procurement. And government has a roadmap in which the whole country should be covered. And we are all on using electronic procurement. Paperless procurement. Yeah, that's the way to go. And of course, the continuous engagements, continuous capacity building that we continue to do, to carry out in different fora. We have radio talk shows, we have TV shows like this. Thank you for giving us this space. We have the virtual trainings. That and many others. So those are some of the achievements that government has registered so far, as far as implementation of sustainable public procurement is concerned.
Now, I do understand there are myths. So please tell us some of those myths and demystify them.
Now, there are quite a number of myths on sustainable public procurement. And one of the key ones is that sustainable products are more costly, that they're very expensive. We cannot afford them. And this also is a mindset, it's more of a mindset issue, because it's failure to understand or to break down, or lack of information. When you don't break down the cost components of an item, of a product, then you will not know the total cost of owning that product. You see, it's not enough, for example, that I buy a laptop or a printer. But I should buy this laptop or this printer while bearing in mind that they are not only the shelf price. Most times we just go for the shelf price, the purchase price, and the lower the better. That's what happens. But we should buy it, considering other costs. What are the costs of operating this, of maintaining it, the service costs? What are the costs? How long will this laptop last? What will be the cost of disposal? How will I dispose it of at the end of its life? What will I do with it? And of course, when we're talking government, we're talking bulk buying. So we're buying laptops for different departments, maybe 100 laptops. How are you going to dispose them at the end of the day?
That's true.
It's even worse with equipment. You have radioactive equipment that you're buying, for example, for the Cancer Institute. Then you should be considering the cost of operation and maintenance, the cost of disposal of that equipment at the end of the day. because many entities have gotten stuck with items, or they have met a lot of high decommissioning cost of decommissioning, and that increases the. So so sustainable public procurement looks at the total cost of ownership, the total cost of ownership of the product, you know, the broken down components, and the total cost of ownership should be lower substantially. And so we have a mechanism whereby that is calculated. That is calculated at evaluation, and a product with a lower total cost of ownership is the one that is more sustainably friendly and preferable. But if we do not go through those details, then the myth is that sustainable public procurement products are what? Expensive. There's also another myth that the procurement process takes long. The sustainable process for acquiring this takes long, and this also is also probably because of our planning. Sometimes it's a poor planning issue or something like that. Those are some of the common myths, really.
Myths, and of course some of the barriers.
Some of the barriers, because sometimes they inhibit the implementation, the successful implementation in entities. Yes.
Okay, and of course, to wrap this up, finally, how can you overcome these challenges and promote sustainable public procurement?
Continuous engagements, continuous capacity building, capacity awareness raising, like this, continuous engagements with different stakeholders, the supplier, the private sector, the CSOs, the development partners, the public. Continuous engagement, because like I said, everybody has a part to play. That is one of the continuous engagement of the market as well. To ensure that the market is ready, it is prepared. How are we able to check the fake, the counterfeit, because there's an issue of greenwashing. It's common in public procurement. How are we able, do we have mechanisms in place to check for the fake, you know? And I also talked about that those are some of the ways that we plan to continue to overcome this myth. Yes.
Okay. Wow. Thank you so much. Maybe the final words for our dear viewers, even as we wrap this up. Finally.
Yes. As by way of parting short, I would like to first of all sincerely thank Family Television for having us, our own television, for hosting this program and giving the Ministry of Finance airspace to be able to engage with you, but also to challenge us that and to interest us in this sustainable public procurement reform. It is a reform which has come to stay. It is a reform that the province of the Church of Uganda has already embraced, by the way, because if you look at the planning framework that is starting next year, it is provided for the looking at, it's one of the objectives that are embedded therein. And so this is a reform that concerns us. God is looking towards us, you and I, being good stewards of His creation, responsible stewards. We have already lost it. We have destroyed the environment. We have thrown kavera everywhere. You remember after Martyrs' Day, there was kavera littered everywhere in Namgongo. We have been irresponsible, but now we have sold tomatoes which are laced with herbicides. But there is room for us to turn around and embrace sustainability, such that together we can have a clean environment. We can have, we can meet our needs. It's still possible for us to meet our needs without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own. God bless you, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Reverend Gillian, for making time and for talking to us more about sustainable procurement. Of course, this is something that we need to know as, the citizens of Uganda, and of course, how to benefit the country. And yes, we have been discussing sustainable procurement reforms in Uganda with Reverend Gillian Amongin, the Principal Procurement Officer from the Ministry of Finance. And of course, we have come to the end of the show. We have been given a lot of information that I think you should definitely use, and use it wisely. So please do spread the gospel. But it's time for me to say goodbye. I wish you a blessed day, but please do stay tuned because we are having another show up next. As you know, it's a Wednesday and we always have the Uganda we want. So please do not go very far. We'll be right back with Edrin Mukalazi.
Issues at hand. This is Charge of Uganda.